Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world with me, Deepika, coming up in the next 1 hour. Fed holds interest rates steady as it awaits Trump economic policy to take hold, sees slower growth. Trump says would be better off cutting the rates. Ahead of Saudi Arabia meet, Trump and Zelensky hold telephonic conversation. Zelensky accepts unconditional ceasefire proposed by US President Donald Trump. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar shares vision for stronger India-LAC relationship at the 10th CII India LAC Conclave. And India's Union Sports Minister inaugurates the second edition of Khelo India Para Games in New Delhi. A very good afternoon to all of viewers joining us at this afternoon broadcast. And to begin with the business news. The US stocks jumped on Wednesday as the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady after a policy meeting. The US Central Bank's rate decision was widely expected, although it also cut its growth forecast for the year 2025 and hiked its inflation outlook. Here's more. The US Federal Reserve paused interest rate cuts again on Wednesday and warned of increased economic uncertainty as it seeks to navigate an economy unnerved by President Donald Trump's stop-start tariff rollout. Policymakers voted to hold the US Central Bank's key lending rate at between 4.25% and 4.5%. They also cut their growth forecast for the year 2025 and hiked their inflation outlook while still penciling in 2 rate cuts this year, in line with their previous forecast in the month of December. US Fed Chief Jerome Powell said that the risk of recession had risen slightly in recent weeks, but was not yet a cause for concern.
It is going to be very difficult to have a precise assessment of how much of inflation is coming from tariffs and from other, and that's already the case. You may have seen that goods inflation moved up pretty significantly in the first 2 months of the year. Trying to track that back to actual tariff increases, given what was tariffed and what was not, very, very challenging. So some of it, the answer is clearly some of it. A good part of it is coming from tariffs, but we'll be working, and so will other forecasters, to try to find the best possible way to separate non-tariff inflation from tariff inflation.
In an unusual move, Fed Governor Christopher Waller opposed the Fed's rate decision because of his colleagues' support for slowing down the pace at which it is shrinking the balance sheet. Now, US President Donald Trump said the Federal Reserve would be better off cutting rates as US tariffs start to ease their way into the economy. All 3 major Wall Street indices closed higher on the news, while government bond yields fell after the Fed announced it would slow down the rate at which it is reducing its balance sheet, which swelled during the pandemic. Most Asian equities also rose Thursday after US Federal Reserve boss Powell suggested any increase in consumer prices caused by tariffs would likely be short-lived. Anamika Pandey's report for DD India. The Indian stock market benchmark indices Sensex and Nifty 50 opened higher on Thursday following gains in global markets. Sensex surged more than 300 points in the pre-opening session and the Nifty returning to its 23,000 milestone. The Sensex opened 0.62% while the Nifty 50 gained 0.56%. The rupee also touched a high of 86.23, which is its best since the 24th of January, marking a 1.2% appreciation over the past 7 trading sessions. This marks a significant reversal for the rupee, which was under sustained pressure until mid-February due to equity outflows and a slowdown in domestic growth. And given this trend, investors expect Reserve Bank of India to further cut repo rate in April, with the possibility of 1 further rate cut ahead. RBI had in February cut the repo rate from 6.5 to 6.25%. Asian markets are reflecting optimism as well, with key indices in Australia and South Korea starting the day on a higher note. Meanwhile, the Bank of England looks set to keep interest rates on hold on Thursday as it now awaits the impact on the economy of implementation of Trump's trade tariff and of the British government's imminent tax hike for the employers. Now, with UK inflation stuck firmly above its 2% target, the Bank of England has cut borrowing costs by less than the European Central Bank and the US Federal Reserve since last summer, contributing to the country's sluggish growth rate. And when it trimmed its benchmark bank rate to 4.5% in February, the Bank of England stressed it would move gradually and carefully with further cuts given the uncertainties hanging over the economy. Since then, those uncertainties have only mounted in large part due to Donald Trump gearing up to announce import tariffs for a host of trading partners of the United States on the 2nd of April, muddying the outlook for growth and inflation around the world. Moving on to Russia-Ukraine conflict now, a critical phone call took place between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, marking the first conversation since their tense exchange in the Oval Office that took place last month. The two leaders discussed several key issues, including a potential ceasefire with Russia, military support for Ukraine, and future cooperation on nuclear energy. The call now comes amid ongoing violence and military operations in Ukraine. DD India's Aarti Rana brings us more. Take a look.
The White House said Presidents Trump and Zelensky had a fantastic phone call toward ending Russia-Ukraine conflict. The conversation was a positive step forward after a tense exchange earlier this year.
President Zelensky asked for additional air defense systems to protect his civilians, particularly Patriot missile systems, and President Trump agreed to work with him to find what was available, particularly in Europe. The two leaders also agreed on a partial ceasefire against energy. Technical teams will meet in Saudi Arabia in the coming days to discuss broadening the ceasefire to the Black Sea on the way to a full ceasefire.
One of the most significant developments from the call was the discussion of a potential ceasefire, but Ukraine claims that Russia is still unwilling to commit to peace. Future cooperation, particularly in regard to Ukraine's energy infrastructure, was also discussed.
There was a question about the nuclear power plant. There was no question about the network of nuclear power plants. The question was exclusively about the plant that is under temporary occupation. It's in danger because Russia is dominating it with weapons, and it's not working because Russia has absolutely illegally held it and occupied it.
As agreed in a call between Trump and Putin, Russia and Ukraine engaged in a prisoner exchange, with 175 troops released by each side. This exchange also included 22 additional wounded Ukrainian soldiers freed by Moscow as a goodwill gesture. Meanwhile, European leaders have expressed concerns about Trump's approach to the conflict, but Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban believes that EU must back Trump to get a peace deal. The focus now firmly shifts to Jeddah, where a new round of talks between Russian and US officials is scheduled to take place this Sunday. The talks will aim to work out the technical details of a permanent ceasefire. Aarti Rana's report for DD India.
Britain is hosting a closed meeting on Thursday of senior military officers from the countries who are keen to help protect an eventual ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. Now, senior military officers from over 20 nations that make up the coalition of the willing, led by Britain and France, are due to discuss how this would work in practice when they gather at the UK's permanent joint headquarters in Northwood. Plans for a Western-led peacekeeping force for Ukraine are set to be moving to an operational phase now. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is expected to attend on Thursday afternoon after first visiting Barrow, when he is due to lay the keel of one of Britain's next generation of nuclear-armed submarines. Also, the European Council summit will convene on Thursday in Brussels. Heads of state and government of the 27 member states, as well as European Union Council President Antonio Costa, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and the bloc's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas will participate in the summit. Several critical topics reflecting current geopolitical and economic priorities are expected to be discussed during the two-day summit. The agenda includes discussions on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, with a particular focus on the bloc's continued support for Ukraine, especially amid heightened tensions and the need for security guarantees. Ahead of the summit, Ursula von der Leyen says decisive days for Europe. Take a listen.
So these are decisive days for Europe, and we have a packed agenda for the European Council. Of course, we will discuss Ukraine, how to get to a just and lasting peace. But we are challenged in our competitiveness, and we are challenged in our security agenda. So therefore, the competitiveness topic will be an important one for this European Council. And then readiness 2030, the white paper, the new plan for security will also be in the center of discussion that we're going to have today.
And now to discuss more about the latest telephonic conversation as well as today's European Union meeting, I'm joined by DD India correspondent on Foreign Affairs Akshay Dongre from New Delhi. Good afternoon, Akshay. Now this conversation between Donald Trump and Zelensky to first talk about comes ahead of the Sunday meeting and after Trump's lengthy call with Vladimir Putin as well. Take us through the key highlights of this recent conversation, Akshay.
Well, Deepika, this was in fact a very important conversation because the kind of showdown that we have seen a couple of weeks back has been devastating, especially for the image of the Ukrainian president who had gone to the Oval Office to discuss all the aspects of the ongoing war with the US president. However, the situation that we are seeing on the ground has not changed much, but after the telephonic conversation between President Trump and President Putin, it was expected that Donald Trump will also be engaging with the Ukrainian counterpart as well, as far as bringing all sides to the table are concerned when it comes to negotiating a ceasefire and the end to the conflict that has been going on for the past 3 years. Now, as far as the key highlights are concerned, Ukraine has asked US to be present as far as any temporary ceasefire is concerned, to mediate the ceasefire as well as to monitor it, so that in a way it gets ensured that the kind of deal that has been done to implement the ceasefire is adhered to by all the sides. However, it remains to be seen that what kind of implementation takes place on the ground when it comes to this lengthy conflict that has been going on for quite some time. There has been an agreement that was made earlier in the telephonic conversation between the Russian and the US leader that the energy infrastructure will not be targeted by the Russian side, and that is on the condition that Ukrainian sides also respect the same commitment as far as the energy infrastructure in the Russian territory is concerned. So the situation remains complicated, but this was and in fact a better conversation than the last one that happened between the two leaders of Ukraine and the US. So there are hopes that a ceasefire will be implemented, but what are going to be the concessions that Ukraine will have to give as far as its territory is concerned, that is the biggest question, because Russia has been asking for Donetsk region, the Donbas region, the Russian-speaking region, Crimea as well, to be recognized as Russian territory. That is the biggest sticking point, apart from the conversation that was regarding the NATO membership of the Ukraine. That was in fact one of the biggest reason for the outbreak of the conflict. So these were certain highlights, but there are going to be other follow-ups of this engagement that has taken place to ensure that the ceasefire is in fact implemented on the ground, and that then further, after a temporary ceasefire, a permanent one can be discussed among the leaders of the three countries.
And we also know the fact, Akshay, that European Union is also meeting today, and ahead of it, we also heard the statement, and I quote the statement, that continued support to Ukraine and the need to invest in defense and competitiveness are closely interlinked as per the European Union. You know, Akshay, we would like to understand that how is it going to put an impact on the ongoing progressive talks between Donald Trump and Zelensky?
Well, it's highly unlikely that the meeting in Europe is going to have any significant impact as far as the progressive talks are concerned. And the reason for that is the Ukrainian leadership realizes, and they are aware of the fact that it is the United States of America that is the biggest bulwark of force as far as NATO forces are concerned. Many of the NATO countries are not even spending about 2% on their defenses as far as protecting their own countries are concerned, as far as contributing to the forces of NATO that require quite a lot of expenditure. And the biggest money was coming in from the US. The most sophisticated arms were coming in from the United States. And in fact, unless the US is involved as far as these talks are concerned, it's not going to mean much, especially at a time when European Union is also fragmented as far as their support to the Ukrainian leadership is concerned. So while there are countries that are agreeing to ramping up their defense spending, it has to be seen in the context that US is willing to pull out of NATO as well. There have been talks going on that the US has been doing much of the work, incurring most of the expenses, even for the security of the European countries who themselves are not using their own money as far as the defense expenditure is concerned. So Ukrainian side realizes that even though if defense spending is being ramped up, it cannot be done at a scale that would be desired by the Ukrainian leadership. As far as this conflict is concerned, there are going to be certain issues as far as getting a unanimity on supporting Ukraine is concerned, even among the European countries. For example, Hungary has not given any arms to Ukraine in this conflict, and they have been saying that more has to be done from inside Ukraine as far as the conflict is concerned. Countries are calling for ceasefire as well. So there is a unanimity even in Europe. So the Ukrainian side does realize that unless US is involved as far as these talks are concerned regarding either ceasefire or continuation of this conflict, just the support of European Union or the European countries is not going to impact the conflict much.
All right. Thank you so much, Akshay, for joining us and bringing us a rounded perspective on the developing situation. The European Union member Luxembourg says it is imperative that Ukraine is given security guarantees if it cannot become a member of NATO. Now, visiting Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Luxembourg, Javier Petel, spoke exclusively to DD India's Ramesh Ramachandran in New Delhi. Take a listen.
We know that NATO will be very difficult. And I just want to remind you.
So Ukraine in NATO is out of the question.
Before Trump, who was president? Biden. Did during 4 years Ukraine join NATO? No. So it hasn't happened the last 4 years. Why now the Americans didn't push for it neither? So but they need guarantees, because if there is a permanent danger, once they will come closer. Once they will come, it's a part of a progress. But now to say they have to be member now in this package, I think this won't fly. I think so. So they need at least the guarantees from all the others that without being member of the NATO, they have at least the support from the countries saying that we do everything to keep the security guarantees that you need, like you would be a member of NATO without being member.
The visiting minister said that it would be premature to lift the sanctions on Russia if a just and lasting peace proves elusive.
As long as there is no progress, I don't know why we should take them away. The sanctions are effective.
And you can watch the full interview at 6:30 p.m. IST or 1300 GMT on Thursday. Time now to take a short break. Still to come. On the other side, we will get you latest from Israel as it resumes airstrikes. Trump says Iran must immediately stop sending supplies to Houthis. And Turkey detains Mayor and President Erdogan's main election rival over graft and terrorism allegations, seizes Mayor's construction company as well. Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Well, Israel has resumed intense airstrikes and ground operations in Gaza after issuing what it calls a last warning to Hamas. The renewed offensives come after a brief period of calm and is once again bringing devastating consequences to the already battered Gaza Strip. Our next report tells you more. Take a look.
The Israeli military has launched heavy airstrikes on Gaza. It also resumed ground operations in central and southern Gaza to expand its security perimeter. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz issued a stark warning telling Gazans to return hostages and remove Hamas from power.
Residents of Gaza, this is the last warning. The first sinwar destroyed Gaza, and the second sinwar will destroy it completely. The airstrike against Hamas terrorists was only the first step. What is coming will be more difficult, and soon you will pay the price. Soon the evacuation of residents from combat zones will begin again. If they don't return the Israeli hostages and Hamas is not being removed from Gaza, Israel will act with force like you haven't seen before.
In a tragic development, a UN building in Dein el-Balah was hit by an airstrike, killing one UN employee and wounding others.
The locations of all UN premises are known to the parties to the conflict, who are bound by international law to protect them and maintain their absolute inviolability. The Secretary General strongly condemns all attacks on UN personnel and calls for a full investigation. He underscores that all conflicts must be conducted in a way that ensures civilians are respected and protected.
IDF has denied striking UN compound and also called on media outlets to act with caution regarding unverified reports. As violence continues to escalate, the international community is voicing concerns. India expressed deep concern over the situation in Gaza and called for the urgent need for the release of all hostages and the continuous supply of humanitarian aid to the region. Leaders of France and Jordan called for a halt of hostilities in Gaza and a political solution to the conflict.
As you had pointed out, Israel's resumption of its attacks on Gaza is an extremely dangerous step that adds further devastation to an already dire humanitarian situation. The international community must act immediately and collectively push for restoring the ceasefire and the implementation of its phases.
Meanwhile, protests in Israel demand that the government prioritize the return of hostages over military objectives. Hamas has rejected Israel's calls to renegotiate a ceasefire deal and insist on proceeding with the second phase of talks. But US has continuously blamed Hamas for the resumption of hostilities, but there was still a US-crafted bridge proposal on the table to extend the ceasefire and bring about the release of hostages held by the group in Gaza. Negotiations remain at an impasse with no clear resolution in sight. The situation in Gaza remains dire, with the renewed fighting further complicating efforts for peace. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that Iran must immediately stop sending military supplies to the Houthis and let the Yemeni group fight it out themselves. In a social media post on Truth Social, Trump added that US strikes on the Houthis will get progressively worse and that they will be completely annihilated. Meanwhile, a densely populated neighborhood in Sana'a was left in ruins on Thursday after the US airstrikes targeted the Al Jarraf district. That injured 9 people. The strikes were part of a US retaliation for attacks on shipping in the Red Sea by the Iran-aligned Houthis. The White House said on Wednesday that it expects to continue its mass deportation of undocumented migrants and fight unfavorable court rulings, but will comply with judicial orders. Now, the White House accused judges of usurping executive power in its latest broadside against federal courts, whose rulings have gone against President Donald Trump's administration. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt alleged that there had been a concerted effort by the far left to pick the judges who were clearly acting as partisan activists to deal with cases involving the Republicans' action.
We have judges who are acting as partisan activists from the bench. They are trying to dictate policy from the President of the United States. They are trying to clearly slow walk this administration's agenda, and it's unacceptable. As the President said last night, we will continue to comply with these court orders. We will continue to fight these battles in courts.
Now, US President Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order on Thursday that aims at shutting down the Department of Education, acting on a key campaign pledge. According to a White House summary, Trump's pending executive order directs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to facilitate her department's closure and return education authorities to the states. Even before it was signed, the order was being challenged by a group of Democratic state attorney generals who filed a lawsuit seeking to block Donald Trump from dismantling the department and halt the layoffs of nearly half of its staff announced last week. Senate Democrats have given no sign that they would support abolishing the Education Department. Trump has repeatedly called for eliminating the department, calling it a big con job. He proposed shuttering it in his first term as the president, but Congress did not act. Now, last month, Donald Trump said he wanted the department to be closed immediately, but acknowledged he would need buy-ins from Congress and teachers' unions as well. Moving on, Turkey seized the construction company co-owned by detained Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu on Thursday. The city's chief public prosecutor's office said the control of İmamoğlu's industry was taken over based on financial crime investigation reports. Meanwhile, thousands of protesters took to the streets of Istanbul to protest the arrest of the city's mayor. Authorities also detained 37 suspects for allegedly making provocative posts inciting crime and hatred over the detention. Turkey arrested İmamoğlu on Wednesday on charges such as graft and aiding to terrorist groups. The opposition figure is seen as a key rival to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. İmamoğlu's detention came just days before the party was expected to name him as its candidate for the 2028 presidential election race. You're watching DD India News Hour. Now it's time to get you all the latest news making views around the globe in brief. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense released a footage showing soldiers loading supplies onto helicopters and deploying tanks during a drill at an undisclosed location. The drills come just days after Chinese military conducted drills with vessels and aircrafts near Taiwan's coast. Memorial events were held in Tokyo commemorating 30th anniversary of the 1995 sarin gas attack on Thursday. The attack was carried out by a cult group that targeted trains at Tokyo Metro during morning rush, killing 14 people and injuring thousands. Haitians took to the streets in the capital city of Port-au-Prince demanding protections from gangs and their violence that has affected most of the city and forced displacement on Wednesday. At least 2 people were injured during the protests, according to local media. Time to take a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Foreign Secretary underscores trusted, secure and inclusive digital public infrastructure, highlighting its transformative role in fostering global cooperation. Up next, we'll get you all the latest from ongoing Parliament's budgetary session in India.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Geopolitics and trade deals, economic challenges amid development, hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. between walkers, money is what money does, and says supply creates its own demand, between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back after that short break. Now let's quickly recap the top headlines of the hour. Fed holds interest rates steady as it awaits Trump economic policy to take hold, sees slower growth. Trump says would be better off cutting the rates. Ahead of Saudi Arabia meet, Trump and Zelensky hold telephonic conversation. Zelensky accepts unconditional ceasefire proposed by US President Donald Trump. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar shares vision for stronger India-LAC relationship at 10th CII India LAC Conclave. And India's Union Sports Minister inaugurates the second edition of Khelo India Para Games in New Delhi. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar shared his vision for a stronger India-LAC relationship at the 10th CII India LAC Conclave in New Delhi on Thursday. Speaking at the session on theme called Advancing Economic Alliances for Collaborative Growth, Dr. S. Jaishankar said that in current times of post-COVID-19 era and conflicts, need of the hour is to de-risk global economy from concentration of the power. And he thus stressed that focus should be on reliable and resilient supply chains.
Clearly, there is a need to de-risk the global economy from the dangers of over-concentration in any single geography. But we also need to build reliable and resilient supply chains. At the same time, because we have now moved decisively, irrevocably into the digital era, we need to ensure trust and transparency when it comes to selection of partners.
And Dr. S. Jaishankar also referred to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent visit to Guyana for the India CARICOM summit, saying the potential of the ties with the region lies mainly in trade, technology, tourism, talent and tradition.
Last year, while visiting the LAC region, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the development of a portal, partnerindia.org. It would focus on the 5 T's, trade, technology, tourism, talent and tradition. Once developed and boarded, it would be the port of first call for those who are keen to engage with each other. We expect this portal to materialize by the end of the year, and hopefully it would contribute to making this conclave an even smarter deliberation.
DD India correspondent Ajay Mishra spoke to Jay Shroff, who's the chairman and group CEO of UPL Limited, on prospects and future sector collaborations between India and Latin American nations. Take a listen.
As far as the LAC is concerned, what are the sectors that are promising for Indian economy?
So UPL is one of the largest companies in Latin America from India. Today UPL and its associates have almost a $5 billion business, and Latin America is a very important region. Also, Latin America is very important for food production. If you look at Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and all these countries, they are very food production worldwide. These are some of the centers, and UPL is very involved in agriculture. I think pharmaceutical industry will have fantastic growth. I think automobile, whenever I'm traveling, I see some of the local automobile companies also presence there. I think it's a land of opportunity. Central America, Latin America is an amazing market. People there really like India. They want to grow the business. The governments want to grow business with India. From the point of view of food security, because there are some products that are being produced in Latin American countries which we import, like lentils and all. So how important is that, and how can we benefit from the agrarian economy in LAC? So I think India is a very large country with 1.4 billion people. Whenever there is a weather issue here or some kind of crop issue, there is a shortage. We can build a strong partnership with Latin America to supply us key products like edible oil, like pulses. I think it's very important to have that because, we are feeding 1.4 billion people every day. If there's a little bit of a shortage, it can cause a lot of problem.
So product diversification as well as market diversification is what India is looking for, and LAC is the next big target. With camera person Kumar Datta, Ajay Mishra, DD India, New Delhi.
India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri delivered a compelling address during the Raisina DPI conclave, and his speech underscored India's unwavering commitment to advancing a trusted, secure and inclusive digital public infrastructure, highlighting its transformative role in fostering global cooperation, driving socio-economic progress and scaling India to newer heights through its accelerated financial inclusion.
Every month, 16 billion transactions happen through UPI. More than half the electronic payment transactions across the world happen in India alone. The social outcomes that have been unleashed by this digital transformation are even more profound. We saw the benefits of digital public infrastructure in full flow, especially during COVID. Nearly $9.3 billion were deposited in the accounts of 420 million beneficiaries using the direct benefits transfer system. Taken together, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile are known in India as the JAM Trinity. This represents the world's largest financial inclusion program. 19 countries have entered into agreements and understandings with India on the India stack.
Following Vikram Misri's session, Antigua's foreign minister delivered an insightful address and lauded India's collaboration on digital public infrastructure, recognizing it as a shining example of South-South cooperation that strengthens the capacities of the Global South.
Antigua and Barbuda envisions deeper engagement with friendly nations, leading technology institutions and like-minded partners who share our common and inclusive ethical innovation. Indeed, in a broader sphere of South-South cooperation, our collaboration with India stands out as a great opportunity. India's remarkable strides in AI and DPI, coupled with its real-world applications in governance, health, agriculture and financial inclusion, offer a pristine blueprint for sustainable progress.
India's Unified Payments Interface, or the UPI, has now revolutionized the financial transactions which are being conducted, besides positioning it as a global leader in digital payments. And by enabling round-the-clock transactions and offering features like single-click payments and virtual addresses, it also ensures unparalleled ease, security and versatility. Now, UPI's profound success extends beyond the strength of its infrastructure and stems from the behavioral shift it has inspired, where trust in the system and its accessibility have been key factors in driving widespread usage. And one of the small yet significant innovations that facilitated this shift is the use of voice boxes by payment apps. Now, these devices, commonly found at snack carts and tea stalls, announce the amount of money received with each QR code transaction, ensuring that the vendors, who are often too busy to check their mobile phone messages, are aware about their earnings. Now, another important design feature of UPI is its provision for users to choose their preferred payment apps regardless of the bank where their account is held. The integration of RuPay credit cards with the UPI marks another revolutionary step in the digital payment landscape. And this feature allows the users to access the benefits of both credit cards and UPI for transactions, enabling them to make payments through their credit lines instead of drawing from saving accounts. And India's digital payments revolution is gaining international momentum now, with both UPI and RuPay expanding rapidly across the borders. Currently, UPI is operational in 7 countries, including key markets like the UAE, Singapore, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, France and Mauritius. Moving on, a Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai has been designated as an anchor agent in India for the International Atomic Energy Agency program for cancer care called Rays of Hope. A memorandum of understanding was signed between Tata Memorial Hospital and the Department of Atomic Energy and the International Atomic Energy Agency on Thursday in Mumbai. Rafael Mariano Grossi, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Shambhu S. Kumaran, who is the Ambassador of India to the Republic of Austria and Permanent Representative of India to the United Nations Office in Vienna, were also present on the occasion. And DD India correspondent Shama Mishra spoke to Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the IAEA, about the MOU signed between Tata Memorial Centre and IAEA. He said India is a natural choice when it comes to choosing the anchor centre for its Ray of Hope initiative. Take a listen.
Rafael Grossi is with us. He's the Director General of IAEA and he's in Mumbai for an MOU signing. What was the MOU all about and how is Rays of Hope going to help the cancer patients overall in the world?
Rays of Hope is about providing radiotherapy care in places and countries which have very little of it or nothing at all. The IAEA has been working in the past with India and with the Tata Centre, but we have come to the conclusion jointly that the level of the situation in terms of cancer cases in the world requires more collaboration, more cooperation.
Why choose India? And if you are talking about the strength of Tata Memorial Centre or overall Indian health sector, how would you rate that?
Well, why choose India? For me, it's a natural choice. Why is that? We see that many of the problems on a global scale are happening in the south. And India has emerged as one of the most dynamic, important economies and countries in the world that can really give the traction, but importantly, the understanding of the peculiarities of developing countries in their way to a better level of development. So it's a unique set of capabilities. It's a unique example.
Talking about the Indian Parliament now, both the houses of the Parliament witnessed disruption on Thursday. In the lower house of the Lok Sabha, the first adjournment came soon after the House began its sitting amidst sloganeering from the opposition. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla condemned the opposition leaders for not behaving according to the rules and protocols of the Parliament. He also reprimanded the opposition leaders for wearing T-shirts in the House that had slogans written in them and asked the leaders to change it. On the other hand, Rajya Sabha saw multiple adjournments amid protests from the opposition. The chairman of the Rajya Sabha, Jagdeep Dhankar, first adjourned the House till 12:15 p.m. IST and then again till 2 p.m. IST before it was adjourned for the entire day. Jagdeep Dhankar called for a meeting of the floor leaders on something which he saw in the House and did not like. Both the houses were adjourned, have been adjourned rather, for the day. And to get us the latest from Parliament, I am joined by DD India correspondent Dipendu. Dipendu, good afternoon. There has been a lot of sloganeering, a lot of messages being sent across through the help of the T-shirts. Take us all that happened throughout the day in both the houses today, Dipendu.
Well, Deepika, good afternoon from here in New Delhi. Of course, the Parliament session, the second half of the budget session of Parliament is underway here in New Delhi. And of course, the budget session, which was functioning smoothly till yesterday, saw multiple disruption since the sitting of both the houses, which convened at about 11 a.m. This morning. In fact, both the houses have currently been adjourned till tomorrow 11 a.m. because following disruption in the Lok Sabha, the disruptions were being created by DMK member of parliaments where they had been wearing some T-shirts which were talking about delimitation, which of course the Speaker Om Birla did take objection to it and reprimanded the opposition MPs to maintain decorum within the House. And of course, the DMK was also holding posters against the delimitation, which is of course not even been finalized, and protesting within the House. So which is the reason the smooth functioning of the House, in fact the Lok Sabha could not take place, and after facing multiple adjournments, one at 12, in fact one at 11 soon after convening, then again at 12, then again when the House reconvened for the third time at 2 o'clock, despite the Speaker's repeated request towards the opposition to let the House function smoothly, the House had to be adjourned because the disruptions continued. And similar was the case in the Rajya Sabha, where demands for grants for the different ministry as well as the discussions on the working of the Home Ministry was underway. Disruptions were being created by the opposition leaders, after which the chairman of the Rajya Sabha had to take a call and adjourn the House multiple times, and after which at about 2:01 p.m. Here, according to the Indian Standard Time, the House had to be adjourned because the opposition did not cede to in fact, the demands of the chair to let the House function smoothly. And of course, it will now reconvene tomorrow at about 11 a.m. when both the houses will sit to discuss and debate over the demands of grants and multiple other key important bills and reports of the government.
All right, thank you so much, Dibyendu, for joining us and bringing us the latest from the ongoing budgetary session of Indian Parliament. Moving on to national updates now. In a major offensive against the Naxals, at least 24 members of the pan-CPI Maoists were killed in two separate encounters in India's central state of Chhattisgarh. According to the officials, 20 Naxals were killed in Bijapur district. 4 Maoists were gunned down in Kankhed area by a joint team of the BSF and DRG personnel of the state police. A police jawan was also martyred in the encounter. The gunfight broke at around 7 a.m. IST in a forest alongside the border of Bijapur and Dantewada districts when a joint team of security personnel was out on an anti-Naxalite operation in Gangalore police station of Bijapur. The bodies of 18 Naxalites along with firearms and explosives were recovered from the spot. In a separate operation in Kankhed district, 4 Maoists were killed in an exchange of fire near village Koroskodo in Chote Betia. Security forces were conducting combined operations when they came under attack and retaliated strongly to it. Time to take a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. BCCI reveals cash reward for victorious Champions Trophy Indian contingent. And up next, we'll get you a detailed report on World Sparrow Day.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked, we just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back after that short break. And now it's time to get you the latest from the European Union, because with the urgency of the world's climate crisis being more broadly accepted, companies have long started to react and make environmental claims in their advertising. Some might be prudent, others not so much. A German environmental group is now suing companies for misleading the customers. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and joins me from Berlin. Good afternoon, Lars. What can you tell us about these cases?
Well, thanks for having me. Well, first of all, I can tell you that this is not the first time the group is doing this. We're talking about the Deutsche Umwelthilfe. Like you said, that's an environmental activist group. And with this latest batch of lawsuits, they are specifically going after companies they allege are misleading consumers with their advertising. Now, one should know that in Germany, more consumers are becoming tuned into environmental problems. More and more consumers are trying to change their habits, opting for products made in environmentally friendly ways, sustainable production methods, and so on. So with the consumer changing habits, there was always the risk, of course, of companies just jumping on board of that train and using certain keywords or claims in advertising without actually delivering.
So Lars, how big a story is this when it's mostly about companies making claims for a handful of products though?
Well, it's a huge story because while these latest lawsuits indeed cover only 5 new products, there is much more to this story. In the past, the activist group has sued sportswear maker Adidas, and that's not over a certain product, but over a general promise that the company made. Adidas had pledged it would become climate neutral by 2050, but the company has actually not given any details on how they would be attempting that goal. So again, the group says there's a company here that abuses people's focus on the topics of environment and climate crisis, but instead of working towards serving this need, taking responsibility for the planet and actually changing their ways, they're indeed mostly focusing on aspects of marketing, presenting themselves in a climate-friendly way at best. That would be the so-called greenwashing, or outright defrauding customers at worst.
All right, thank you so much, Lars, for joining us from Berlin and giving us the latest information. You're watching Lead India News Hour. Now it's time to get you all the latest from the world of sports, to begin with Para Games. The second edition of Khelo India Para Games kicked off in the national capital on Thursday. These games will be held in 6 disciplines, including Para Athletics, Para Archery and Para Badminton. These games are part of Khelo India mission in order to provide a platform to talented athletes on showcasing their sporting and competitive skills. Earlier this week, the Khelo India Para Games mascot Ujjwala was launched on the sidelines of the Fit India Carnival. The mascot, called Ujjwala, is a sparrow that symbolizes the pride of Delhi and represents determination with empathy. In cricket, India's Board of Control for Cricket in India on Thursday announced a cash reward of $6.7 million for Team India after winning the ICC Champions Trophy this year. Now, this financial recognition honors the players, coaching and support staff along with the members of the men's selection committee. Captain Rohit Sharma-led Indian team dominated the tournament, registering 4 commanding victories and defeating New Zealand in the finals that took place on the 9th of March. BCCI's President Roger Binney lauded both the players and the support staff that worked behind the scenes for this great achievement for India. And Team India secured a dominant 3-0 victory over Maldives in a FIFA International friendly match at Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Shillong on Wednesday. The Blue Tigers led by 1-0 at half-time. Seasoned defender Rahul and a player of the match Liston scored the first 2 goals for Team India. The biggest highlight of the game came in the 76th minute when Sunil Chhetri scored his 95th international goal. Chhetri netted the ball with a swift header to announce his return to international football. The victory ended a 15-month international victory drought for the Blue Tigers, who will now play Bangladesh in the AFC Asian Cup 2027 qualifiers on the 25th of March. From the peaceful mornings in villages to the hustle and bustle of the cities, sparrows once filled the air with their cheerful chirps. Flocks of these tiny birds, uninvited yet welcomed, created unforgettable memories. And to raise awareness and protect these small creatures, World Sparrow Day is celebrated every year on the 20th of March.
Once abundant, the house sparrow is now a rare sight and a mystery in many places. Over time, these little friends have just vanished from our lives. That makes such initiatives all the more important. To raise awareness about the declining sparrow population, the World Sparrow Day was initiated by Nature Forever, a bird conservation organization, in 2010. In 2012, the house sparrow became Delhi's state bird. Since then, the event has gained global attention. In India, sparrows are not just birds, they are a symbol of shared history and culture. Yet the declining in numbers continue incessantly. Several factors contribute to this decline. The use of unleaded petrol has led to toxic compounds that harm the insects sparrows depend on for food. Urbanization has also taken away their natural nesting spaces. Pesticide used in agriculture has reduced the number of insects impacting sparrows' food supply. Environmental conservationist Jagat Kinkhapwala has emphasized the need to balance development with environmental protection. PM Modi has also highlighted the importance of protecting sparrows in his monthly radio show Man Ki Baat.
हमारे आसपास बायोडायवर्सिटी को बनाए रखने में गोरैया का एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण योगदान होता है, लेकिन आज शहरों में बड़ी मुश्किल से गोरैया दिखती है। बढ़ते शहरीकरण की वजह से गोरैया हमसे दूर चली गई है। आज की पीढ़ी के ऐसे बहुत से बच्चे हैं जिन्होंने गोरैया को सिर्फ तस्वीरों या वीडियो में देखा है। ऐसे बच्चों के जीवन में इस प्यारी पक्षी की वापसी के लिए कुछ अनोखे प्रयास हो रहे हैं।
Sparrows are small but significant birds that play an essential role in maintaining ecological balance. World Sparrow Day is a reminder of the importance of preserving our tiny feathered friends. Bureau Report, DD India.
And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download it right now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Deepika, and from all of us here in New Delhi, thank you so much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.